Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Alan L. Webb, and I am going to talk with you today about the Analytic Memo, which is an important aspect of the dissertation process. Let me set the scene for where you are in the process at this moment. You have completed your first 3 chapters. You have submitted those to your dissertation committee. They have approved your proposal, and you have presented that to the Institutional Review Board at your university. Now, they have given you permission to go ahead and begin collecting data. So, you're at the halfway point of the dissertation process. You've received approval. Now you collect your data, and I'm going to go through this based on a qualitative dissertation today. I will do a quantitative or a mixed methods at a later time. But for today, you will collect your data. In qualitative research, you normally collect 3 types of data: observations, interviews, and documents. So, you have collected, I'll work with the interview in this presentation. You have interviewed 1 participant, and you have transcribed that, and now we have a document. We have a transcript. You go through the transcript and you code the transcript using one of the coding techniques that you have learned in your methods courses. Perhaps it is holistic coding. That's where I would begin. It could be in vivo coding. It could be versus coding. It could be axial coding. It could be open coding. It could be any number of types of coding. But you code your document. And then you may have 20 codes. You may have 30 codes. You may have 40 codes. But you take them and you have the first section of the Analytic Memo. And you list all of the codes that you receive from your document. And I would list them as they answer the research questions. So if you have 3 research questions, you would have 3 sections here. And the codes that answer research question number 1 would be under it. Those that answer research question number 2 would be under it. And those that answer research question number 3 would be placed under it. And at this point, let me insert something that I think is very important. That you have your 3 research questions, but you also add what I call a mystery question. And you might want to just put a question mark there. And this is very important, and I'll talk more about it in a few minutes, but it's extremely important for a dissertation student to know about this. So, after you've coded your document and you've listed your codes based on the research questions, then you write a participant summary. In other words, this participant, how did they answer research question number 1, number 2, and number 3? 1 paragraph summary is all you need to do. And then all of the material that did not answer questions 1, 2, and 3, you put that under the mystery question. So now we have the first section of your Analytic Memo. And we move on to section number 2, which is called Data Interaction. In data interaction, you want to go back and look at your literature review and look at your theoretical framework and see how did the literature in your study answer research questions number 1, 2, and 3. And you make a brief summary for each one of those. Then you look at your theoretical framework. What did your theoretical framework say about the 3 research questions? Now, you compare your participants' answers to those research questions, which you have here in the first section, with the way your literature and your theoretical framework answered those research questions. So you have a comparison and contrast. And in particular, I've listed these words, and they're very important. Do your participants, or does this particular participant, confirm, enhance, illustrate, or enlarge upon the literature? And if so, in what ways? Or does this participant disconfirm, refute, or disagree with the literature? So you have that comparison and contrast. How does your participant answer those research questions in contrast with the way your literature answered them and the way your theoretical framework suggests they should be answered? And at the end of this, you will finalize your mystery research question. When you set up a study, you have 3 research questions or 4, however many, that you want to answer. But you're going to accumulate data that's very interesting, very significant, and it is very important. But it doesn't directly correspond to any of the 3 research questions. So, there's a 4th research question. You didn't know what it was when you began collecting data, but now you see you have all of this data and you reverse engineer the research question. You're getting a lot of answers and you find out what question is this data answering. So you recreate a 4th research question, and that's going to be very important because that will correspond to your original contribution to knowledge. And that is what a dissertation is supposed to be. Many dissertations do not make an original contribution to knowledge. Some dissertations, they make an original contribution to knowledge, but they don't realize they have made it, or they don't articulate it very well. So it's important, I think, for my students to know they have made, well, first of all, to know that the dissertation is supposed to make an original contribution to knowledge. That they know that they have made an original contribution to knowledge, and that they can articulate what that original contribution to knowledge was. And that always makes for a very, very good dissertation. So now we've got the first section, which are the codes, and the second section, which is the interaction with the data. Now, in the third section, we should have, well, before we leave here, write these up in paragraph forms for each research question. How did your participant agree or disagree, confirm, disconfirm the research questions in comparison to literature? And now we move on to quotations. Quotations from your data should be salient, powerful, illustrating, humorous, or insightful in some sort of way. Qualitative dissertation committees are going to expect to see you sprinkle in to your narrative a variety of quotations, anecdotes, metaphors, things that come from your participants. And they should be the type of quotations that help explain the answers to the research questions. So as you're reading through your transcript and you come across a salient quotation, and you may not know how that's going to be used, but you know it is good, you know it's important, you know it's significant. So record those in the third section of your analytic memos. And also remember to record where they came from. I remember my world record was 45 minutes when I was looking for a quotation when I did my dissertation, and I could not remember where it was. And so I started going back through 27 different transcripts. And I would read through them, and I couldn't find that quote to save my life. It took me nearly 45 minutes to find it, and eventually I did. But if I had recorded it in my analytic memos, I would have had it right there at my fingertips. It would have taken me at the most 2 or 3 minutes. The final section of your analytic memo I call insights. Those eureka moments that you have. You may be driving down the road. You may be swimming in the pool at the Y. You may be playing basketball. You may be walking. You may be jogging. They come in all shapes and forms unusual times. You may be asleep. One of the things I found out or discovered when I did my dissertation was that when I went to bed at night, I would dream. And many times I would come up with very, what I would call insightful moments. And I would wake up the next morning when the alarm clock went off, and I would say, okay, I've got all this good material, and I would go to make a cup of coffee. And by the time I made the cup of coffee, I had lost everything. So when you have these eureka moments, they may be ideas about further research in this area. They may be new questions that need to be answered. They may be solutions to problems. They may be practical applications. There may be innovative ideas. Whatever they are, make sure you write those down and put them here in the Analytic Memo under Insights. Now, data collection and data analysis should always be simultaneous. And if you do it in this fashion, let me point out what happens. When it comes time to write up your Chapter 4 and Chapter 5, if we look at the participant summary, that is your rough draft for Chapter 4. It is already written for you. You have already done it. You simply have to polish it, connect it, and update it. Chapter 5. The first part of Chapter 5 is discussion. Discussion is your data interaction. How does your literature and your findings coalesce? So right here, you have the rough draft for Chapter 5, Part 1, which is discussion. And then your salient quotations are filtered throughout the document. And then when you get to write Chapter 5, Part 2, which is conclusions, then you have all of these written up. And then the third part of Chapter 5 is recommendations. And so you have recommendations for future research, recommendations for new questions, recommendations for policymakers, recommendations for procedures, recommendations for the participants in the study. And so when you do this type of analytic memo, it's all done. All you have to do is write it up. Unfortunately, a lot of people make the mistake of they'll collect their data and then they will analyze it, and then they will go back and read their literature, and then they'll start writing it out. Whereas if you do the analytic memo, then you've been doing that all along. So that when you finish the analytic memo, you have pretty much finished your dissertation. It's just a matter of writing it up, polishing it, editing it, and having a wonderful document to present to your committee. Thank you very much.